joining us this evening. Regular scheduled council meeting of the Park City City Council on February 23rd, 2021 at 7 p.m. Marlo, would you call the roll?
John Lanier.
Here.
George Glover. Ben Saucetta.
Here.
Melvin Kerr.
Here.
Tom Jones.
Here.
George Capps.
Here.
Brandy Bailey. Jim Schrader.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Tonight, Ben is going to lead in the invocation and Tom's going to lead in the pledge. If everybody please stand.
Let's pray here. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that you've given us and the opportunity that we have to be here tonight. We'd ask for your wisdom and your guidance tonight in the decisions that are needed to be made. We'd ask for your protection over our police officers, our first responders, over all of our citizens. We're thankful, Lord, just for the safety you provided during the cold weather last week as well. Again, we ask your blessing upon tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. John?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to amend the agenda to scratch item 5. As I understand, he's not able to make it tonight. And then the second thing would be add item 16, which would be discuss and consider city regulations regarding recreational vehicles.
Okay. Melvin?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 7-0. Oh, tonight we have a great announcement from our Senior Center Director, Madison, if you'd like to come up.
Oh, there it goes. There we go. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sherry Busnitz. I work at New Anthem Church. Every year we give away our last offering of the calendar year on top of the 10% that we do for missions. But when we do the last Sunday of the calendar year, we like to give it to somebody local that can benefit from it. In 2019, we were able to gift money to the Park City Police Department. And this year we decided that we would like to give the money to the Park City Senior Center in hopes of putting in a pickleball court. Pickleball is all the rage at our church right now. So it was a pleasure for us. But we would like to present the city and the senior center with a check for $2,942.87. Well, there it goes. Throw it on the ground now. I think it's already in the budget, so we're good. Oh, you want
Great.
That's okay. I just wanted to, on behalf of all the seniors in our community, just say thank you to New Anthem and Sherry and all. Is it still on? Thank you. I just wanted to take a second on behalf of all the seniors to say thank you to Sherry and all the staff and congregation of New Anthem Church for their donation and helping the betterment of our seniors and our community. So thank you so much, Sherry. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is public forum, and Cecil Goldsmith is here to speak this evening. Cecil?
All right to take this on. At least this time, I haven't brought in a big list, but I'm Cecil Goldsmith, 6508 Randall Drive, Park City, 67219-1648. Remember that one. To the citizens of Park City, council members, mayor, city administrator, and the regular staff, thank you guys for being here, working. There's a few things that I really need to get a hold of and talk about. Is over the years, they were going to say they're going to be talking about it later about the snow removal. As we know, Longmont, Randall, and Gary Street are collectors, is what Jack always says. And the reason the house was bought on Randall, it's the first one to get cleaned. First snow, there was only one, swipe of the middle of the street, and that was it. The second storm, I didn't see anything out of the center, but on Tuesday or Wednesday, they came out and did the sides, but we still had packed snow. And the city itself had streets with packed snow. I know we've got salt and sand mix over there that should be, sent out there. Basically, I learned a few things about the Public Works Director, that he's new around here. And somebody that came from Texas, he's glad he probably did. Snow removal down there, not too good. But we need to sit there and take care of that for the snow removal. The other one was, I talked to Dana a little bit ago, was the trash collection. We missed out last week. Now, you guys have a contract with the trash service, and you guys, take the funds, and because it's mandatory to have recycling pay for it, and we can pay for the trash through you guys. It needs to be taken care of. Even, tell them to rebate money back to you guys to put in the fund for the trash service, for the price that we pay. We need to be $2 or so. It's nothing, but the fact is they need to learn that, they're public service, they need to come out, being paid to do this. And if it was in my field of training and stuff where I retired from, the fire department, would we come out? Oh yeah, we'll come out, whatever the snow is, but we would be out there. I've complained once or twice about 1901 East Gary. There's a portable basketball goal that the people have in the gutter, sitting up against the gutter, and they got it strapped down into the yard itself. Basically, that goal should not be out in the street at all, and it needs to be taken care of. Kids are going to get ran over. We had one about 40 years ago, was, ran over down through there, and their parents said, well, there's no place to play. There's no excuse for that. But this goal does block the water, going down through there, and, something needs to be taken care of. Yeah, another one is the street sweeping. The last people I ever saw go through the streets was a company that they hired. We have a new street sweeper, and it's not been out on the street. In the residential areas, we at least got, twice a year, sometimes 4 times a year, all the, city streets taken care of. So it's something for the Public Works to look at. I know I can't pick on the mayor that much, but the videos I have was when they were testing out come out and tested it. They did your street out in front of your house, and it looked like it was a stacked deal to get you to buy the equipment. But I was told that it didn't, they had the choice of where they want to go and do. My other concern, I'm not even going to get into, but I might have to stick around and see what you're going to say on the RVs and stuff like that, because you're hitting in my ballpark now on those. So, other than that, I think that's going to be it. If you have any questions, I guess not.
I just want to say, I saw the street sweeper out this morning on my way to work, and looked like they were doing a great job.
Yeah, but it's out on the main streets and stuff like that. They haven't come into the...
This is the worst freezing storm we've had in 40 years. They'll get to it. Be patient. They got brand new equipment. They'll get to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't out there before even, so, before this, but, there's some things out there that just, streets and stuff being articulate, I drove on ours on Randall, then I went over on Grove, and the center line through Grove, there was a path through there. And then I got out on our streets during some of the snow, and, even the Wichita streets are looking better, and I hate Wichita. So, we got to do better. I didn't make it down to Hayesville, and that one would have really been bad, so I'll let you guys go. I mean, I don't know what those donuts or whatever's going to be thrown at me, but I'm get back out there.
Thanks, Cecil.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll move on to staff reports, and we'll hear from our Public Works Director.
Howdy, folks. Your friendly Arkansan. I'm from Arkansas, by the way. This is going to kind of address some of the things that you were just mentioning here. Is it on? Yeah. Over the past few weeks, with the bitterly cold temperatures and accompanying snowfall, staff and I, and certainly some of the council members have received comments and concerns regarding our snow and ice removal operation. I'd like to say that overall we were successful, but acknowledge there's a lot of room for improvement. To provide just a little bit of background on snow and ice removal policy in the city, there was a resolution passed back in 1999, and it gave us guidance on how the snow and ice removal operations were to begin. And throughout the years, we've had quite a bit of change in leadership, and I think that maybe some of the leadership kind of didn't know this resolution existed. This resolution 355-99, it calls for the police department to initiate all snow and ice removal efforts, and then outlines the priority from arterials to collectors, and then to residential streets, and then onto park roads. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been observing silently and trying to figure out what we're going to do to make this a better operation in the future, and found a few things that I'd like to talk about. First is the equipment we currently use. The street division primarily uses 1-ton trucks with plows and spreaders to remove the snow and ice from the roadway surface. It does a decent job, but the plows do not have adequate weight to really provide enough downforce to remove the packed snow or ice from the surface of the road. My intention in the future is to utilize the road grader, as it has the more ability to provide more down pressure to better remove the snow and ice. Utilizing the grader in conjunction with the plows will increase or create more efficient and effective snow removal from the roadway. Secondly, some voiced concern they did not see us applying salt and sand mixture to the roads during this event. This was a concise decision for several reasons. Salt is ineffective at melting snow at temperatures really below like 20 degrees Fahrenheit, probably 20 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Sand does provide traction, but it's best used after the snow has been removed from the roads through the initial clearing. Third, we need to get better at how we remove the snow, starting from the center and moving outwards. I noticed throughout town there was a lot of windrows in the center of the road. When it is happening is during the daytime when it does get above freezing that the medians start to melt and the road runs off to the edges, and then it refreezes at night and creates icy roads again. All in all, I think that we're successful, but we can be better. I've already started updating the snow and ice removal policy to better reflect our current operations as well as address these inefficiencies. And I'll present that to council later in the fall, so they're ready to go for the next season. It can be shared with our residents at that time. So you guys have any questions regarding that?
I got a question for you, son.
Yes, sir.
Just, I know this is a time that creates a lot of road issues, and I've seen that in other communities. Did we have anything big that popped up that you had to go out and take care of from?
That sewer main issue on 53rd Street did pop up, and fortunately we got that fixed. That was a pretty big issue. As far as the roads go themselves, not really. Everything went pretty smooth. We didn't have any equipment breakdowns or anything like that to speak of. It's just it was a really bad event, and
I was going to say the last week with just that sewer was a huge issue. So we
Yeah.
appreciate all your hard work. We know
Thank you, Mayor.
you, CCUA staff, was actively involved and worked many hours on trying to find a resolution for that.
Lots of hours.
Ben?
Yeah, I did also want to say thank you to each one of the Public Works Department. I know this is what they say, the coldest snap it's been since before I was born, and you all did a phenomenal job there with it all, considering everything going on, plus everything that happened behind the scenes that most people aren't aware of, such as the sewer main break and all those things. You all did a great job considering the staffing that you have and our ability to take care of. So I appreciate you all getting out there in that -17 and
Thank you.
helping us out.
Thank you, Simon. Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion? Jim?
Approve the consent agenda.
And John?
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 7-0. Under new business, we removed item 5, and we'll move on to item 6, which is consider authorizing the transfer of unspent funds to the equipment reserve. D?
Good evening. As you're all aware, last year staff began developing replacement plans for our equipment, vehicles, and technology to assist in funding these scheduled future purchases, as well as to mitigate the size of the annual budgeted transfers needed to fund them. Staff would like to transfer some of the unspent year-end general fund cash to the equipment reserve fund. The amount of cash available to transfer will not be known until the 2020 books and records are ready to close. We're proposing a not-to-exceed amount of $500,000. At this point, keeping in mind that the books are not closed and the numbers will continue to change a little, at this point, it looks like we may have an additional $200,000 to $300,000 we'd like to leave in the general fund to be able to fund at least a portion of the 2022 software purchase or possibly some additional street purchases or improvements. Be glad to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Jim?
Just because I'm curious, why do we need to approve it now without knowing that rather than later? Is this for an accounting principle or?
Well, we really need to get the books closed before the next meeting, and hopefully we'll have them closed in a couple days. So if we held the books open for this, it's slowing up getting us information to our auditors for the audit and so forth. So
Okay.
It's possible, but it's better if we can get them closed sooner.
Okay.
Is that a motion, Jim?
I was finding it here, so I'll go ahead and move that we authorize the city administrator and finance director to post a 2020 transfer of unspent year-end general fund unencumbered cash that exceeds the 2019 year-end balance to the equipment reserve fund in an amount not to exceed $500,000.
And Ben?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 7-0. Thank you. That brings us to item 7, which is discuss and consider a revision to the conditions of approval for the Pratt Industrial Park Addition, a final plat for the property located 1/2 mile north of 53rd Street North and east of Hydraulic. Sean?
Yes, sir. Good evening. Pratt Industries and its agent Bachman Company are requesting removal of condition of approval of their previous plat. On November 16th of last year, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the plat with a vote of 6-0. And then on November 24th, the City Council approved the same plat with, again, a vote of 6-0. It was contingent upon some conditions. Item number 3 was that it provided that the applicant shall provide financial guarantees to the city for the extension of sanitary sewer prior to recording the plat. Pratt Industries, in cooperation with the city, is now planning the construction of the sanitary sewer main that will serve its project, as well as provide expanded sewer service to land north and northeast of the subject property. It is their intent to pay for this improvement directly and not finance it through special assessments, which negates the city's need for the guarantee per Article 7-103. So the recommendation is to remove that stipulation under the plat.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Jim?
No, I don't have any questions, so I'll go ahead and move on this also to revise the approval of the final plat for Pratt Industries Park located 1/2 mile north of 53rd Street, north and east of Hydraulic Avenue.
Ben,
Second.
got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item 8, which is discuss and consider an agreement with the Kansas Department of Transportation, the cities of Valley Center and Park City for the 77th Street project. Sean?
Yes, sir. Attached is a proposed project agreement between KDOT and the cities of Valley Center and Park City for the reconstruction of East 4th Street, otherwise known as 77th Street for us, from the bridge over the Wichita Valley Center floodway to 135 to address failing pavement, narrow road conditions, an offset intersection at Seneca Street, improving the entrances for businesses, and installing a new roundabout intersection at 77th and Broadway. This agreement, as part of the State Economic Development Program, outlines general provisions, responsibilities, and funding obligations between our three organizations. The total estimated project cost is just around $6.3 million. KDOT is contributing 70% to the construction cost only, and construction costs are just over $5 million, which equates to $3.533 million. The cities are responsible for 30% of the construction cost until KDOT's funding limit is reached, and then 100% beyond that. Additionally, the cities are responsible for 100% of the preliminary engineering, construction engineering, right-of-way, and utility adjustments. Now, verbally, Sedgwick County has committed to paying 1/3 of the local match, and the total local match is the 2.7 number written on the staff summary. That will be outlined in a subsequent agreement that will be brought before council at a later date. And then after that agreement, there will be a third agreement between Valley Center and Park City for the remaining amount. Park City has, or I should say Valley Center has been identified as the lead agency for this particular project, and there was conscious thought behind that. The project is actually being done in 2 phases. Phase 1, closest crocodile of the boat, is the roundabout intersection at 77th and Broadway. That should be done within the next year. Actually, it should be let probably here somewhere within the next 30 to 45 days. The western portion of that, all the way over to the Valley Center flood control zone area, that will be Valley Center's responsibility. And so they have a bigger portion of the pie, as well as their project will last longer after ours. And so it made sense to have them act as the lead agency. Just so you know, the reason why I came up with the amount that Park City's total amount in the end is $571,000 is from that $2.7 million, the 30% local match. Sedgwick County is committed to taking care of 1/3 of it. The remaining 2/3 is not equitably divided between Valley Center and Park City. It's divided based upon project limits. Valley Center is responsible for 69% of the project, and Park City is responsible for 31% of the project. That's where we come up with our estimated approximate cost for the roundabout intersection for Park City should be $571,000. So there we did meet both Valley Center, KDOT, and us. We met this earlier this week because this is not your traditional KDOT agreement that we would encounter or experience, kind of like what we did on 61st Street project, something that was WAMPO involved, because WAMPO usually normally, now we're relying on federal funds. This is part of the state's economic development program, so no federal funds are involved. So there are certain stipulations that KDOT would normally include in their contract, which they did in this one, that are no longer applicable. That's why I'm asking for council to approve and authorize the mayor to execute the contract, because we still expect that there may be a minor modification. Some of those minor modifications include, whereas right now it says that the plans need to be approved according to KDOT requirements. Well, it's not according to KDOT requirements, it's according to city requirements. Second of all, the plans say that they need to be reviewed in accordance with the KDOT manual. Again, they need to be reviewed in accordance to city design criteria. If there is right-of-way to be purchased, and there's a small piece for the intersection, but that's already been negotiated, it says that we're required to use the Uniform Act, and that's incorrect. We don't have to because we're not using federal funds. And then finally, when it comes to utility relocation, it says to utilize KDOT, but again, we're going to be using city standards. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Jim?
Well, first off, what a great way to figure out a really expensive intersection and
Yes.
share the cost and minimize
Yes.
that greatly does. Because that's an intersection that really needed to be updated, especially
Tremendously,
before
and,
now.
and the one thing that I'd like to again reiterate is Sedgwick County. Commissioner Lacey Cruz, she came out big time on this in order to support us, and we know that it was all in support of Amazon, and that's why we qualified for the Economic Development Grant in the first place. But there's kudos to both KDOT and Sedgwick County, and then it's very advantageous that we're able to partner with Valley Center, because now we had 3 or 4 municipal entities all working together,
Yeah.
which made the project a sure thing, hopefully.
So my one question is, 61st Street, we had Wampo. Here we've got the state. We'll probably have to keep our eye on this, but do you see anything that could make those intersections look different? I mean, is there going to be consistency between the two? Because we got 2 different groups paying for them.
We have 2 different engineering firms. The 77th Street is being engineered by PEC. The 61st Street project's been in existence for the last couple of years and is being engineered by WSP. But I can tell you that just as of this last week, we have requested now twice different concrete samples. So that way we make certain that both engineering firms are writing it into their bid specifications, the exact same colored concrete, the exact same. PEC hadn't realized at the 61st Street roundabout, we had planned for future possibilities as far as the center of the roundabout. We wanted to make certain that there was conduit already laid for if we want to have growth or vegetation landscaping in the middle. We wanted to make certain that there was conduit laid in there just in case eventually we want electricity for whatever the council determines in the future. That was news to PEC, so now they're making certain that that too is included, so that way both intersections, regardless of whether they're done by 2 different companies, 2 different engineering firms, should look very similar, consistent.
Great.
So,
Tom?
Well, I've got, when we discussed this before, we were talking about doing a roundabout, and we were talking about doing some work on to 135. Does our piece of that include that? Or-
yes, sir.
Okay, so
Yes, sir.
we're redoing 77th Street, or part of it, between 135 and the roundabout.
We're basically going from right around the limit of 81 Speedway
Right.
east, as
Okay.
far as our dollars will allow,
Okay.
with a mill and overlay for the 77th Street.
Okay. I wanted to-
KDOT, we had worked with KDOT, and the bridge is in good shape, but yes, it does require a mill and overlay, and that's where we're trying to value engineer to make certain that we can expend those dollars as far as they possibly can go.
Okay, I wanted to let the public know that, and
Yes, sir.
and it didn't come out in the roundabout discussion part of it.
Yes, sir.
And then, is this motion on 8 the way we need to say it? I don't know if there's any other questions. I was going to make a motion if this is correct.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Go ahead. Okay, I'd make a motion that we approve and authorize the mayor to execute an agreement between the Secretary of Transportation, Kansas Department of Transportation, and the city.
John?
Second.
Okay. I just wanted to bring up, I was in Valley Center the other day. I got recognized by somebody and got approached and entered into a discussion about this, which was very favorable. The Valley Center resident was excited about this company and was excited about the partnership and wanted to know when we were going to do something about 85th. And I said, well, that is on the ticket, but it might be a little further down the road, but it is something that we plan on addressing. But they were very excited. Once again, brought up to me just that intersection at 85th and the high school kids and school kids that travel that we need to make sure that we're actively involved in pursuing 85th Street.
I was asked the exact same question by a Saddlebrook resident earlier today, wondering when is 85th next on the docket. So,
Okay.
I would
Tom?
like to make one other comment. This is outside of Wampo, so it's totally different from the state, and this is a windfall for this area. So We're kind of blessed here.
Yes.
Yep. All right, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Sean.
Yes, sir.
That brings us to item 9, which is discuss and consider approval of the letter of agreement with Whitson and Company for engineering and design of 53rd Street lift station. Sean.
I'd like to first offer that if there are questions regarding this, because a lot of things have been moving rather quickly when it comes to sewer main extensions, lift stations, and I apologize that we have not had that opportunity to talk about this previously before bringing a contract to you. But some of the things that we have been able to accomplish in the city is because of the fact we're willing to move rather quickly. And this is another one for council's consideration. With the substantial growth that has already either been approved, proposed, or expected between 61st and 53rd Street, as well as Hydraulic and Hillside, staff has identified the halfway point between Hydraulic and Hillside on 53rd Street as the most logical location for the city's next lift station. A lift station at the proposed location would be capable of serving the entire square mile of Section 15, Township 26 South, Range 1 East. The timing of this request and the construction of the new lift station is crucial, as the development of Pratt Industry Park Addition has already begun, and the new lift station would be needed to be operational by September 1st of this year in order to support that business. Attached is a proposed letter of agreement, scope of services, and fees for Whitson and Company to design, bid, and provide construction-related services for the new lift station. Staff is working with the property owners of where the lift station would reside to obtain the necessary property dedication and easement. The anticipated cost of the construction for the new lift station is somewhere between $280,000 and $350,000, depending on the type of lift station, whether it's a submersible, a package station, telemetry, flow monitoring, etc. The anticipated cost of connecting the lift station to the city's existing sewer, which is just south of Buckley, is somewhere between $120,000 and $145,000. This is an unbudgeted request. Staff recommends approval and authorizing the mayor again to finalize and execute a letter of agreement with Whitson and Company in an amount not to exceed $46,200. If I could, so that you understand the whole entire thought process behind there's a graphic up on the TVs as it stands right now. The big rectangle in the middle is where Pratt Industries is proposing and putting their building. Originally, when we first discussed this with their engineer of choice, which at the time was Baughman, is still Baughman, I should say, Pratt Industries was planning on them paying for the yellow line on the left-hand side of the page. They would be taking it from 53rd Street all the way up to their northwest corner. We knew that there was going to need to be a lift station installed, so we had looked at the blue line that runs from that corner over to the red little star. Both of those have been somewhat transparent because of the fact that was the older thinking. It got a new lift station, which would be advantageous for helping out with the city's downtown concept. It would be advantageous for the residential properties that are platted directly to the north of that. It would be good for Pratt Industries. But then, as you all know, over the past couple months, there has been talk about a piece of property being developed in our area of influence outside the city limits, just to the east. And then just recently, there have been talks and negotiations with people that are looking to develop the 15-acre parcel that's right at our southeast corner. When that was presented with some talk with city engineers, public works, council members, it was determined that the location where the bright red star is at the bottom of the page is more logical for a lift station, because that whole entire square mile that's highlighted all drains to that location. So if you look at the two yellow lines as far as Pratt Industry, it remains relatively the same distance, same line, so it's the same cost for them. The lift station, the city was going to have to install one now, but if we install it here, we don't have to have a second lift station in the future if future growth happens to the east. The blue and the red line down at the bottom, The red line is indicating that it would need to be a forced main taken to the west at least 2 properties over to get it up high enough, and then it could gravity feed down into the existing sewer system. Again, we will be working with individual property owners in the future to have them participate in a cost share agreement for that portion of the cost of the construction. The proposed property, the 15 acres right now, that is still under negotiations, and the individual property owner is willing to help out the negotiations by dedicating an easement and the necessary land for the lift station, which is very good for the city as well. So I know things are moving rather quickly, and I apologize for that, but this would be working with Wilson and Company, who has extensive experience, and oh, by the way, is working with CCUA on the whole entire sewer plant expansion, so they're a natural fit to get this going rather quickly.
Tom, do you want to add some comments here?
This is a plus. We're putting a lift station in there because we missed an opportunity several years ago to pay for about $150,000 worth of sewer line to go south of 53rd. I don't want to make this mistake again. So I'm going to make a motion that we, or move to approve the authorization of the mayor to finalize a letter of agreement with the Wilson Company, and the amount of not to exceed $46,200 to be paid from the capital projects fund.
Ben?
I had a quick
want a
second
for
for discussion. Can you go back to that last slide just real quick? I just want to ask a question. So the 15 acres that you're talking about currently is that rectangle where the star sits at the
Yes.
bottom?
Yes, sir.
That other square just to the right of that there to the east, is that the previous one that we talked about before, or?
Yes, and we are still discussing with them. It is, because they're not in our city limits, it's not ours to dictate how they handle their sewer and water. We have made it known to them, though, that we have figured out a way to help them that would probably be less expensive for them rather than having Wichita serve them. But that's
that plot
that's
right
up to
there.
them, and that's,
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to I was
Yes,
making
sir.
sure. Perfect, I'm good.
So this is one of the things we kind of brought up about, we talked about before, just shoring up our borders. You know, if we go out and do this, we make sure we're in a position that we can continue to service people and hopefully bring others on. And I think this is a good move for the city as a future move, kind of like what Tom brought up. So we got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item 10, which is discuss and consider the approval of a street name change from Echo Hills Drive to Whitson Way. Sean?
Yes, sir. One of the directives proposed to staff over the past couple of years was to figure out ways to honor and acknowledge previous mayors of the community. This one just seems to fit hand in hand. The proposed street name change under consideration seeks to rename the existing north-south section of Echo Hills Drive to Whitson Way, generally located west of 135 and north of 53rd Street. This segment of Echo Hills Drive under construction was dedicated in 2 separate plats, Echo Hills Commercial Edition and Echo Hills Commercial Second Edition, which also delineates a second segment which is also named Echo Hills Drive that runs east and west. So right now, at that intersection, there are 2 street signs that say Echo Hills Drive. So it creates a conflict for both police and first responders. Police and fire, I should say, both which are first responders. Plus, it does provide us an opportunity to recognize past mayors. This process requires just simply an execution of an affidavit per KSA 12-420, correction of certain plating areas and procedures. Russ has already drafted up the actual affidavit. We've already checked with the property owner. City has that authority, but we did check with the property owner and they thought it was very appropriate. So,
Tom?
I've got a question. The piece of road that we're talking about is the one that runs behind Arby's, correct?
it's the one that runs, the one that runs behind Arby's is Echo Hills Drive as well, the short segment.
Right.
The one that we're proposing that gets renamed is the one that's highlighted in red on the staff summary.
Okay.
It runs north and south. It's the property it's the one that runs behind Atwood's, to the
One-
west of Arby's.
I wanted to make sure he got the more prominent street than a little sliver.
Yes, sir.
Ben?
Sure, I do just want to say, make a motion here to approve the street name change as presented. Jack's been a great advocate for our city, for the development of our city, for the expansion, all that. He is, in essence, Mr. Park City, so this is exciting to see us be able to do this. So with that, I do make the motion to approve the street change name as presented.
Melvin?
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes 7-0. Sean?
And sir, I will say that we know that Jack downloads and reads every agenda, so but we will definitely have him here probably at the next council meeting or the one after that to make a formal presentation, so.
Yeah, we got to get a picture of him with his street name. It's in way. I'm excited.
But we know if that street sign disappears, whose garage it's gonna be.
Well, he might get one just to
sir.
hang in his place. That brings us to item 11, which is discuss and consider approving a contract for the construction of a pickleball court at the senior center. Zach?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Park City Senior Center has been approached by a very generous community group with the offer to fund the construction of a pickleball court at the senior center. City staff saw this as a prime opportunity to get the best options for a possible price. Staff solicited bids for pickleball courts at Mclean and the senior center as well. So on this, the fiscal impacts can be $2,943.87 to be paid for from expendable trust fund. What I've got is I've got a couple bids attached here. One from Multicon and one from Versa Sports. Let you guys look at them if you hadn't looked at them, and if you got any questions, I can answer those before I do.
Go ahead.
I was just, for $3,000, you know, I was looking at the bids and I didn't see cement work or any of that, so how are they laying this out for $3 grand?
Yeah, I figured those kind of questions come up. What we've got two different companies here. The area that Madison had laid out at the senior center, it's just to the south. That patio area is the perfect size for a pickleball court. The bid from Multicon, what that bid lays out, it's going to be a resurfacing, and what they'll do is they'll come out and they'll completely resurface, and with that resurfacing paint, it's got like a sand texture to it, and it'll also have one bid that they put in there was it's like $2,500. That's just with temporary nets, but the other one's $3,000 with permanent nets. But that's resurfaced, like a resurfacing paint, striping, and everything else for $3,000. The second bid from Versa Sports, they're using the existing, they're not gonna have to construct anymore, no concrete from either one of them. But they're just gonna, Versa Sports just gonna lay out new stripes for $1,900. I did reach back out to Versa Sports and ask them, you know, if they would provide, you know, what they could do for the $3,000, or if they could provide us a quote for the for, you know, a painted surface as well with traction. And they said approximately $2 a square foot, which would add, about $2,000 or about roughly $3,000 to their price. So their price would equal, about $5,000. And he really, 5 versus 3, and he just didn't see it necessary, so he wanted to stay with his $1,900, well, roughly a little over $1,900 bid. And so I just say for the price, $3,000, the senior center is going to get, they're going to be well protected. The safety of the seniors that are playing up there with the traction control and a really nice looking court. So that's why I'm recommending that we go with Multicon. construction for their pickleball court not to exceed $3,000.
Okay. John?
Sorry, I was reading through on the next one here. Get back up to the top here. I'd make a motion to approve the quote. You said Versa Sports, or did you change that?
What's that?
Versa Sports,
Multi-con.
Multi-Con Sports for pickleball courts. I'm sorry. Multi-Con Sports for the construction of a pickleball court at the senior center not to exceed $3,000 to be paid from the expendable trust fund.
Tom?
I'm going to second it, but I also have a question. Is there any kind of screening or anything, or?
Not that Madison had set up at all for the senior center. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure that's something that they could look at, or
I
we
just
could
think
look at
about
in the
wind
future.
and stuff and,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, when she found out about it, this was such a good gift that they'd gotten, and going into the next agenda item, we're looking at what I'm going to present next. It's just prime opportunity to try to get these two up here. I'm sure that's something we can look at. Maybe helping her install some kind of screen. Public Works helping them, or if they fund something. But yeah, that's just something she didn't have included in the bid. So.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item 12, which is discuss and consider approving the pickleball court construction options at Mclean Park. Zach?
All right, once again, you have me. Okay, Park City has seen some major growth in recent years, and in wanting to ensure every area of the city keeps up with the growth, City Council made the decision last year to approve increased funding to the Parks and Recreation budget to make necessary improvements to the many wonderful parks we've got throughout the city. So during the regular Parks and Recreation Board meetings, the idea of pickleball courts come up, and it was presented, and there was a unanimous decision to move forward with that. So city staff made some researched options and presented those to the Parks and Recreation Board. Their choice was brought forward to be presented to City Council. So that's what I'm bringing to you guys tonight. So that's what I've got here. The fiscal impact is going to be unbudgeted out of the general fund Parks Department. What I do have attached is only one quote. I did send it out to the same two companies because those are the two most local companies here. Multi-Con, you notice they didn't send one back. He did go out and look, and he said, for the time being, he just regretfully declined to put a bid in on this location for the option that was chose by the park board. But so the one quote that I do have is from Versa Sports. So.
Okay. John?
So, and I just want to ask, and I think I know the answer to this. This is going to be where the old tennis courts were?
Yes.
Okay. So there's not anything yet for where the basketball courts are?
No. And I will tell you, Ben was at the meetings. We've got options. And when I had, I presented and I showed them, options for the both. This one here, like you can see on there, they'll convert the old tennis court into three. They'll per his bid, make the expansion, and they'll go out there, expand it, compact the soil, do a 2.5-inch overlay. I've been talking to Simon. One thing that they don't include here, if it does get accepted by the board, one thing that him and I we do see necessary is the fact that we'll go in ahead of that if it does get approved with our own public works, with our crack sealer, and we'll do some crack sealing ahead of that to further prolong the life of the asphalt. If this is something you guys decide to move forward with. So. And
that fence will stay that's around it?
That's really going to be up to you. I mean, per the bid, it will. Because they didn't include that in the price. We're going to remove the half to help with the construction price, and then, the park board, they said that we'd address that later. So.
Okay, let me go back to the top here. I'm ready to make a motion unless someone else has comments.
Jim, and then Ben, and then Tom, so, but everybody can make comments after a motion too, so if you want to make one.
All right, I'd make a motion to approve the quote from Versa Sports for pickleball courts at Mclean Park in the amount of $20,900 to be paid from the General Fund Parks Department.
Jim, did you want a second for
I'll
discussion?
second that for discussion.
Okay, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I only had one question, and maybe this is for the park board, but I vividly remember the discussion a year or two ago where we wanted to put in an RC track, and it was gonna take over a space used already by somebody else. Here, we're gonna put in a pickleball court over a tennis court. Are we sure we're not taking space that somebody else is using or wanting to use?
I would just say this, if you haven't seen the tennis court, it's
I haven't.
in
Well,
very,
I
very,
have, but-
very bad shape. And
Let's just say I don't
I don't
play
know
tennis.
if anyone else has, I've never seen anyone play tennis on that, it's so bad.
Okay.
Okay, Ben?
Just kind of from the park board perspective, as far as when they were discussing this, is that was, the issue was, well, we're gonna do something with the tennis court because as John said, it's not usable. I mean, it's in bad shape and not anything, so, and it's been that way for a long enough time to say, I mean, we're not taking over anything because nobody's using it, period, at this point in the condition it's in. I do agree that this is probably a better use of that space than the tennis court is in general, because it has become much more user-friendly of a game pickleball is than tennis is. And so I think it'd be great. The park board did consider this for quite some time, just going back and forth. They looked at the basketball courts there in Mclean, and with the layout and such of it, it was going to be a very awkward way in positioning there in that. They had a couple different bids, and really with the condition of the tennis courts needing repair some way or another without adding liability to the city just because of the poor condition they're in, if people are out there, the park board felt best that this be the place where we begin the pickleball courts. Is either we put them at the basketball court and repave the tennis courts to make it usable, or we work here at this location to make it usable and turn it into pickleball courts.
Thank you.
Okay, Tom?
The first thing I had a question was where it was going to be, and you answered that as an existing space. Because as we add into that park, we're running out of things. I mean, they're just running over things. And we ought to start looking at other places to put some of this stuff, so. But since you're repurposing something that already exists, it's different.
Yeah, in my opinion too, it's another way to kind of beautify the park also and repurpose something that we've got there that's, it's much needed too, so.
And it provides some refresh to that
It really
area.
does. It really does.
John?
I guess just from speaking of this sport, it seems to be growing so fast that I would say this, we're putting 3 in this year, that when budget time comes, we probably ought to keep an eye on this prior to that, because I can just tell you that they're gonna be used as soon as it gets done, and we'll probably wanna add more, because when you put some in, it's gonna grow more.
Well, the point I was trying to make is I'd like to utilize other parks too, where we can put these out and spread them out, so. Okay.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Zach. That brings us to item 13, which is discuss and consider approval of a contract to perform installation of new water services for High Ridge 3rd Edition. Simon?
See, that's on now. So at the intersection of 69th and Hydraulic Street, there's 24 new duplexes that are currently being constructed. This will result in a total of 48 new water services needing to be installed. I reached out to multiple plumbing contractors to send a bid if interested to perform the installation of the new services, and only received a bid back from Dueling Construction Company Incorporated to perform the work. So what this is to install the new water meters for these new duplexes. The city is going to provide the water meter kits essentially to Dueling, and they'll perform the work to install them. So, do you guys have any questions?
Brandy?
No, that's, right. Yeah, as we install those services, they pay for the meter kits and stuff like that, and we'll have to add the installation of those. The way this breaks down is it's $60,000, so approximately half of them are $1,000 each, and then the other half, because they have to bore into the road, are gonna be $1,500 each. So, that ends up being $60,000 total. Right.
John, did you have your hand up? Or scratch? Ben?
Yes, I'd go ahead and make a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to execute a contract with Newland Construction Company Incorporated to perform the installation of new water services for High Ridge 3rd Edition in the amount of $60,000 to be paid from the Utility Water Fund Department.
Jim?
I'll second that.
Okay. We got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that
Thank you.
motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Simon. That brings us to item 14, which is discuss and consider a purchase of a Christmas tree for the round plaza in front of Park City Administration Center. Dana.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for consideration this evening. A community Christmas tree in the town square has become a holiday tradition for cities across America. Park City does not have a town square yet. A Christmas tree positioned in the round plaza in front of the City Administration Center would become a shining marker signaling the way toward our future downtown district. In addition, it would become a holiday destination where people in our community could come together, take selfies, take holiday pictures. It would provide an opportunity for the Community Relations Board to organize holiday activities and events that will bring our people in the community together and foster new community traditions. I would answer any questions. You have information in your packet that shows the look of the tree and further information.
George?
Well, I'd say right up front, I support this, but I also remember a few years ago, the last time we put a Christmas decoration on city property is it was firebombed. And fortunately, the individual that did that doesn't live here anymore, but you know, it was a difficult time. And to the best of my knowledge from that time forward, we hadn't, but I do support this.
In response to that, George, what was bombed had a religious nature to it. A Christmas tree is considered a holiday. It is a government holiday, so I think that might be something that could alleviate some of that concern.
And I understand that.
I
It's
know.
the word Christmas that got it.
Yeah.
But I support you. I'll be behind you. Bring it on.
Brandy?
I just want to say I'm excited about Christmas tree package of the Temple Display LTD in the amount of $14,271.67 to be paid out of general fund governing body.
John?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Awesome.
And that motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you. That brings us to item 15, which is discuss and consider amendment to the municipal code relating to amendments to the Uniform Public Offense Code for the Kansas cities. Doug?
Mayor and council, this is a cleanup, and it's necessary in order to accommodate the digiticket process that our police officers utilize in citing violations of the Uniform Public Offense Code. Specifically, Section 11-126, as it exists today, the first two sections in there refer to marijuana-related offenses, which are duplicated in the UPOC, and so in our city amendments to the UPOC, those have been deleted, and what remains is subsection A, which refers to just general violations of the Kansas Controlled Substance Act. That remains because it's still of some use to our police department when there are very small volume of some drugs. The district attorney refuses to prosecute those as felonies, and we then can prosecute those under that subsection. So that takes care of Section 11-126. Section 11-133, when I was doing this, I noticed that there was a duplication in there. There was a reference to a Section 10.27.2 of the UPOC. I'm sorry, to 10.271 of the UPOC, and that was a duplication of another section of our local regulations, and so I amended that to that reference being for electronic cigarettes to be 10.272. And then finally, the section 11-127 duplicates section 9.9 of the UPOC, and that relates to the inhalation of vapors or huffing criminal violations. So this cleans up at the request of the police department to make their digiticket process accurate when they cite drug violations in our city.
Ben?
I just wanted to say, Doug, and to the chief, thank you guys very much. I know we've been doing a lot of ordinance cleanup, and I want to say thank you for going through and taking the time to catch up.
Well, this actually started with Lieutenant Capps, and or Captain Capps, I'm sorry, I demoted him. He's in charge of the digiticket process, and he found the problem and then referred it to me. And of course, when I start looking, then there's always one other thing or two other things, but thank you.
Thank you guys for the work on these, just to get them cleaned up. So I'd make a motion to approve ordinance 1117-2021, and an ordinance amending section 11-126 and 11-133, and repealing section 127 of the municipal code of the city of Park City relating to amendments to the Uniform Public Offense Code of Kansas cities, and repealing the originals of said section 11-126 and 11-133.
Melvin?
I'll second that.
John, did you have anything since I missed you? Okay. We got a motion and a second. Not seeing any discussion. Marlo, would you call the roll?
John Lanier.
Aye.
George Glover. Ben Sosetta.
Aye.
Melvin Kerr.
Aye.
Tom Jones.
Aye.
George Capps.
Aye.
Brandy Bailey.
Aye.
Jim Schrader.
Aye. And that ordinance passes 7-0. Thank you, Marlo. That brings us to item 16, which is discuss and consider city regulations regarding recreational vehicles. This just picks back up from our workshop that we started earlier this evening. Just kind of, I don't want to hash through everything we talked about, but Tom did bring up a good point at the end when we were talking about maybe certain streets that do not allow vehicles to be parked for a longer period, like you were being, maybe we identify a street width, where if your street is narrower than the specified, you would not be able to leave it in the street, and that might help resolve some issues. But I know probably what you're talking about is more in the horseshoe, where a lot of people have single car driveways. The streets are already narrow. I don't know if it helps them still if we do something, because it still doesn't offer that. But I did like Tom's suggestion where it allows more access to other people throughout the community that might be able to do that versus being restricted because of where you live in. So
I think my general thought is, just, and I agree, is doing the most we can with this to be accessible for as many citizens as possible without overburdening. So it's not going to be able to fix everyone's issue, but as long as we're not, leaving out certain segments by a more broad stroke, that I think that's good. So I would be, if we identify streets kind of like we have already in several ones where we did before, as far as the one-sided parking and such like that, we know what some of those concerns are. That would be good there. And then my second, just to kind of follow back up, when I brought up my question during the workshop at the end, it was just I want to make sure that we are able to provide some sort of answer to the individual that brought up the original issue concerning residency or staying in something when it's legally parked, and maybe, and that's a touchy subject, but that was kind of my thought behind that.
Yeah. Tom?
On the street thing, I think there ought to be a prohibition of slide outs being open too. I don't care how big the street is.
I think the chief addressed that earlier, that if it's going to be in the street, it had to be within the 8.5 feet. Is that correct?
I don't think it ought to be legal to have a slide open in the street.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Chief, is that correct in what you said earlier?
Right, I suppose if it had slide outs open and it was within the 8.5 feet, it would still be legal. So, but generally speaking, that puts it beyond 8.5 feet wide when they open those up. So then it wouldn't be legal to park it on the street.
But it would be easier to enforce if you said no slide outs open on the street side.
That's possible. I guess we'd have to kind of maybe define.
We were talking earlier about
That is.
safety and stuff, and having another 18 inches or 2 feet sticking out wider than the taillights on the RV.
We'd have to look at maybe how to define that, you know, as what a pop out is. You know, I think we kind of know what that is, but I'm not sure how we could look at that. I mean,
yeah. I'm just thinking if you're parking to load and unload in the street, then you really don't need it open, or you shouldn't need it open. But
True, but I know there are some travel trailers that if that's not out, you can't walk down, or you can't go back and forth. Not all of them are like that, but there are some I know I've looked at that, you know, if the slide's in it, you don't have access, or you might have a very small, narrow space where it can make it difficult packing or unpacking. George?
You know, I don't want anybody to take me wrong, and I mean no wrong. I'll probably support this. I agree with most of it. But I got to tell you, I'm from a different generation than you folks are. And I heard words coming across here like, if you're going to lay down and sleep, you got to get a permit. Come on. But this is America. You shouldn't have to get a permit to lay your head on a pillow and sleep. We need to find some way to word that different. You know, a city shouldn't encourage neighbors to rat their neighbors out. That's something that they did in Soviet Russia. We should encourage our neighbors to work with each other. You know, if I got a problem with my neighbors, I go talk to them. And I found out in my years as a police officer, the best way to settle a disturbance between neighbors was get them together and get them to talking. When you do that, you usually find out they like each other and they get along. And they know the answer to the problem and they'll solve it. But through this whole wording and stuff, I have a little bit of a problem with the wording of, if you're going to lay down and go to sleep, you got to get a permit. Not in this city, not in America. We need to smooth some of that language out, I think. But overall, I support it.
So what's your suggestion? Like, how would you, because I think what we're looking at now is you get that 14 days,
Yeah.
but somebody can go move it 6 inches and start again. So how would we restrict that? Or
I don't know. I don't claim to have the answer for it, Ray. And like I say, I support 99% of this. It's just some of the language, like you know. I don't think city ought to encourage neighbors to rat their neighbors out. I wasn't raised that way. I don't believe that way. If I got a complaint with my neighbor, I'll work with him and do everything I can. And if there's a problem, we have code enforcement, and I see them all the time patrolling the streets. And if there's a problem, they're going to see it. But I don't think we ought to be encouraging neighbors. Like the one lady that came here, she had a legitimate complaint. But she did the right thing. She brought it to the right place. I agree with stuff like that, but I think we ought to tread lightly. That's just my opinion.
Right, but she's one of the reasons why we're having this discussion,
Right.
because code enforcement can't do anything about that.
Right.
So we're trying to figure out how do we fix it?
I understand that. I was just asking if maybe we couldn't smooth some of that language out a little bit.
Okay.
That's all I'm asking. I'm going to support it.
Okay. Chief, did you have a comment?
I was going to say, that's why we're trying to get the language, I believe it was occupy and/or store, when we're talking about the 15 days. So we're really not, someone who's parked in the driveway, we really don't care if they occupy it or not. In this case, it would be that they're storing that. That takes away the necessity of us proving that someone's actually occupying it. And that kind of goes to your point, sir, on, what they're doing in there. We don't really, wouldn't matter in this case. We wouldn't have to prove what they're doing. It's just the storage of the RV in the driveway. That's all we would really have to prove.
That's where I was going.
But then, once again, that doesn't help the gal that came and talked to us, because that trailer's parked behind the setback.
Right. That's the and/or
Right.
part.
Doug?
Well, yeah, that's correct, and that was the point that Ben was trying to get to, but if we adopt that language, they still need a permit to occupy it. And so it just makes it more difficult for us to enforce, but the general permit process is going to say occupy or store for a period of up to X number of days, whatever the council decides, 2 times a year. So for the most part, I think we can answer George's concerns by saying it's going to be code enforcement going out and looking at trying to identify an RV that's parked, stored in an area that's not an appropriate area behind the house and on paved surfaces. And there's not, at that point, any concern about whether there's somebody in there, somebody that sleeps there, somebody that cooks there. It's just they have to have a permit.
Right.
For this lady, we're going to have to work a little harder.
Yeah, I think what you brought up is perfect. It solves the problem up front, but we still can't help the gal out, because we
can help her out. It's just going to be, we've taken care of the conflict. We did that at the last meeting or 2 meetings ago. It's just going to be a little more difficult to enforce that specific problem where somebody's appropriately stored and living.
Okay.
To the extent that it bothers somebody, yes.
Does that help with?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Brandy?
So can we say something like no living in the RV period unless you have the permit for, say, 10, 14 days, whatever we decide, 2 times a year? Would that?
We're going to say that.
Right, and then no storage in the front setback.
Without a permit.
And then 24-hour loading and unloading in the front setback. And no loading or unloading in the street unless you're actively loading, and then you leave.
That's kind of what we've been kicking around. Melvin, did you have a comment?
The only thing I say is, if the guy gets it out of storage there, brings it home there, and he's got a problem with it, he may have it 48 hours there to try to get it fixed before he gets on the road. That'd be the only problem I'd see there, so. I don't know if I'd lead him towards 48 hours versus 24.
I think, honestly, if our problem wouldn't be the person who, in that instance, they're taking an extra day and it's a one-time thing, that goes to discretion. That's really not even what prompted our discussion today. So our code enforcement officers are not going to be concerned about the one-time, but it would be the person who does that, every week or every month or whatever. And that's the problem that we're having. So.
Okay, John.
I think 48 hours is really reasonable. I mean, you think about it. If you're going to go camping on a Friday night, you can't go get that camper and bring it to your house Thursday night and get it all loaded and packed to leave. I mean, you need a little time to do it. mean, I know what we're trying to do, but I think we really also got to think about the people that have a camper to go enjoy it and get away for the weekend and stuff like that. And we got to be reasonable. And I think if you go get your camper and drive it to your house, you know, you're going to leave Friday night when you get off work, but if you bring it home on Thursday night, there's no way you're going to get that whole thing loaded and ready to go, where you got 48 hours to get it loaded. And I just think we got to be reasonable, and 48 hours, how much is that really hurting what our overall complaint of this, that brought this up?
What if you split the difference and went 36? Because what the chief is saying, you know, you can go get it on Thursday and then you're not taking it back till Tuesday. So you can really stretch that time out that you just keep bringing it back.
Well, that's what I was thinking though, I mean, just say you get off work on well, say Wednesday, you go get that thing at 5 o'clock and bring it to your house. Well, now you got till Friday at 5 o'clock to leave town and go on your trip. Where if you have 36 hours, you can't do that. You wouldn't be able to get it till 5 in the morning on.
Right, okay.
I just think 48, I mean, it's not unreasonable. I just don't, and I really don't think these people are our problem.
No.
I mean, these people that are going to get their stuff and go on camp, they're not the problem that we have.
They're not. Our main problem is that in front and the living in it.
So I just hate to see us restrict people that are, I mean, they're really not what we're looking for. So I really think we ought to stay at 48.
Okay. Ben?
Thinking back to George's point, and I appreciate that thought, because there is, and even John's as well, I don't own an RV, so I don't think in terms of that. That's just not my way. So I appreciate perspectives of individuals that might deal in that area, because they're going to know what it's like to need to load and unload something. That's just not my world, so I appreciate that. But to George's point as well, you know, when it comes to just addressing problems with neighbors rather than tattling on them in some cases. Some cases there are legitimate concerns, there's legitimate issues, and we saw that in being brought up to us as well. But, you know, I think to one degree where the difference lies is the fact that, you know, when we talk about freedom of, you know, as property owners or whatever the case might be, we still have the ability to, you know, have some sort of safety within that. So when you have individuals that are residing in campers or RVs in residential areas, and they are in that area that's right leaning up against the, in this case, or the case that was mentioned right up by the window of the bedroom, then it becomes a real problem. So how do you solve the idea of, one, hey, you know, okay, this is, and I'm not, please understand, I'm not making light of it, but, you know, this is America, where are we going to tell people where to sleep, which is true to a large degree, but also then we have safety feelings, though, of neighbors and individuals as well. It becomes an issue. So how do we differentiate that? I think it's great just saying, hey, 48 or 14 days if it's there. We're not saying residing or not residing, because that's when it gets stickier. I think 48 hours is reasonable as well. Just from people that deal with traveling, it's better than 24. Just because, again, like John mentioned, if you get home, get off work at 5, pick it up at 5:30, get it home to 5:30, I guess, I'm sorry, then you have till 5:30 the next day to leave, you're going to be kind of stuck on time-wise. So I would have fallen that 48-hour period at least.
I would say the other area where the 48 hours could be good is when somebody's maybe winterizing or getting ready to put it away or giving it a bath or an extra cleaning. And that takes some additional time that somebody is not just taking and packing and unloading. So that would be another area where it could be reasonable. And we're talking, where are we at on parking it in the street? Does that fall in that time frame? That's
the 48 hours?
Yeah.
You know, my main concern, just to scroll back, Mr. Mayor, is whatever you all decide, I'm fine with that. I just want it to be written in a way that when the neighbors complain or someone comes to one of you and says, you know, why aren't we doing X, you know, enforcing X? It's written in a way that we can enforce it. That's my main concern. So, and if street parking is something that you feel like is something you want to do. I just want to be sure it's written in a way that we can enforce it.
Okay.
I kind of like what you mentioned earlier about the width of roads. I mean, to me, that is a pretty good deciding factor on safety of, you know, if someone's on an arterial road that I could see parking like in Tom's area or even in our area. But then again, if you see, you know, over straight north of City Hall here, I mean, the roads are a little more narrow. I think if you do, I like the mentioning of the slide outs, prohibiting that. I think that's a good idea, unless they're, kind of like we said earlier, actively cleaning or doing whatever. Really, I don't know if you really want it on the street side, period, even if they are. Our goal is safety more than anything.
Okay.
Well, we are not going to allow people to park where there's no parking.
Yeah.
So again, the question is, what are the limitations on when we have parking on streets, no matter what, whether they're narrow streets, wide streets? What limitations do we have under our code today? 8.5 feet, 8 point.
Well, they can't park RVs on the street at all, and then there's exceptions that are granted for that.
Okay. I wasn't aware that you couldn't park RVs on the street.
Part of it goes to that definition of right of way. So, what was the intent versus what's the legal definition of right of way?
No. The question is, do we allow it? They're talking about allowing it. So my
currently
or prohibiting it.
What do you mean?
I'm saying conceptually, we have streets and we have parking. We don't tell people that you can park compact cars over here, but you can't park, you know, dualies over here. I mean, we've been down that road, excuse me, the bad pun, on parking on one side or the other or both sides. And so we kind of know the problems that we have in our community. But if you're going to say, I just think from the public standpoint, if you're going to say, well, you can't park an RV on the street, well, you can park everything else on the street. Why can't I park an RV on the street? And if you're going to limit, then what's the rationale for limiting parking RVs on the street? Forget pop-outs for now, and assume that it's less than 8 feet.
I understand where you're coming from.
From a consistency of enforcement, it's just,
I get where you're coming from. It's the
again,
same width.
and I'm assuming we're going to clean up the definition, because you can't park a jet ski on the street. I mean, that's now an RV, but we're going to clean that up. And we're really then going to be talking about, and you can't really park a trailer on the street if it's put it up on blocks. That's not, but if you've got an RV that's self-contained and drives down the street, slide in, whatever, it's okay to say you can't park it on the street, but I guess you need to, I would suggest you think about what's the rationale for not parking it on the street. I guess I'm kind of arguing the other side of the way this has gone, but I just would like the whole concept of what we're doing here to be, the enforcement of this to be sensible and consistent with how we treat parking on areas of our town that have narrow streets. And right now, we let people park and people figure it out.
Right. I think that's a good point. I think the only thing we look at is that time frame. So if somebody's going to be there that long and you have somebody with a travel trailer hooked up to their pickup and you got neighbors trying to back in and out of their driveway and they can't see around or navigate that, that's the only reason why I would see doing that. And I think that's what the chief was trying to say, was just mitigating some of that by limiting the time, but not making a change to any type of
Do
parking.
we
on
limit the
street.
time for people to park on the street, though? I mean, that's, I'm sorry to be argumentative, but guy parks his
No,
his
that's-
big truck out there, do we, because we don't have chalk, I mean, we're not doing that, are we?
No, if we're talking trailer or semi-trailer, so if semi-trailer meaning a fifth wheel camper, those cannot be parked on the street anyway, if they're not hooked up to a motor vehicle. Right now, that's in our uniform, standard traffic ordinance. So we would have to change the standard traffic ordinance if we want to make it legal to park one. So I don't know that we're talking about that, but.
I wasn't, I was talking about self-contained vehicles that pull up to the curb.
Yeah, just
turn
like a
on, turn
motor
off.
home, yeah.
I guess I would just say this, like, I feel like the difference would be like with a recreational vehicle, for lack of better, just so it encompasses everything. Like, restricting cars parking in the street is something, I mean, most people drive a vehicle every single day and it moves, where customarily, like, recreational vehicles are normally stored somewhere. So if you don't limit it, I think you're gonna have a lot of them in the streets everywhere. And they're large or tend to be wider or whatever it may be, but I think, I mean, cause a lot of people, you don't commute in your RV or, well, George does, but you don't, I mean, most people don't commute in their RV, it'll just sit out for a long period of time. I also think the other thing we need to consider, if you can, that it needs to be parked in front of that owner's residence. I mean, cause to me, like, parking it down 3 houses down in front of my house, is kind of a crappy thing to do, but,
No, that's hilarious, because I get more phone calls about people complaining about their neighbors got the car parked in front of their house, and can I do something about that? And that's another thing I think Doug would come back and say, well, it's a public street. Like,
Well, in 48 hours is, that again, you know, I guess we could start chalking, but.
You can't do that.
Okay, yeah, you can't do it anymore, right? So. But the 48 hours is, that's the guy that goes out and drives it a couple inches. Okay, I reparked it.
Yeah.
I don't know how, I don't know how we enforce that, is.
Okay.
And that's the reason why Lieutenant Wolf made the recommendation of if you're actively loading it. That would be the one time that it would seem appropriate to park an RV on the street, according to what he had passed earlier, is if you're actively loading it, because there are some houses to where you don't have a driveway, so you can't really back it up in there, and that's unfortunate, but if need be, okay, park it in front of your house, actively load it up, and then go.
Okay. George?
Well, you know, I've got 2 nieces and a nephew that live out in Washington State. And I was talking to them on the phone the other day, and they've got an RV, and they're planning on coming here. They originally were from here. And they're coming here this summer. And you know, the reason I'm kind of interested in where we're going on this is, you know, I'll be able to tell them what to do, you know. I might have to tell them to go over to 53rd Meridian, that Walmart will welcome you, as long as you buy some of their goods. But, you know, Walmarts or a truck stop is about the only place you can park. There doesn't seem to be any good camping places around here that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I had a friend come visit me, and they had to go to El Dorado and find a place, and then I had to drive out and get them and bring it back.
But you know, Frankie, the elderly lady that lived across the street from me for years, her nephew and him and his wife came down to see her all the time, once or twice a year. They lived in Illinois, and they always had this big, nice motor home, and they always parked it in the street out there, and they'd be down there for a week, and you know, it was just never a problem. It was never a problem, and that's why I'm wondering about this. There's some of these things that are a problem, and some of them are not. Of course, I live on a snow emergency route, so it's a wide street, and he could park his camper there or his motor home, and they would stay with Frankie for a week and then go on. But it was never a problem, and that's kind of where I come from.
we have a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different dynamics to.
There. Well, you know, I've seen When I was a police officer patrolling here, I've seen several of them around town, these pop-up campers that was sitting in yards and actually decaying. And, you know, it wasn't in my bailiwick, and I don't think we had a code enforcement then. But, you know, those things need to be moved. They were not only unsightly, they drew rats and stuff like that. And I can see problems with stuff like that.
I can think of a couple, one up around Ravina where they had a deteriorating mobile home that got shuffled from their side of their house to the front and to the back, and Urban and their brothers complaining about that one because it's decrepit looking. And then I think we got the one just on 61st Street that meets all the requirements behind the setback of the place, but, you know, huge eyesore coming down 61st Street. And that, I guess what's even worse about that one is it doesn't move, and we probably know that it's used as a storage facility. So, John?
Just a question, I guess, I know this is just a workshop, but, I mean, do you feel like there's enough guidance for us to kind of table where we're at for now? And maybe even the council can do a little thought into the street parking of 48 or actively loading or whatever? Do you feel like?
I feel like we've got enough information, and maybe individually Sean might, you know, if you choose, visit with some of you if you have questions and so forth, but I think we have enough.
What I was thinking might be a good idea if we kind of take some of the key points and bullet point and email it out to everybody so that we can kind of soak on it, of some of the things we've talked about as far as the in the street while actively loading, the permit on being stored in front of the house for the 15 days, and just kind of put some of those things down so that we can sit here, we can take and look at how these other cities would like us to trailblaze for them so they can figure out their problems too.
Hey, I know we didn't have a chance for people to sign up to speak on this because we came in late. But I know Cecil would like to speak. Will you allow that?
Sure.
Thank you. I've been sitting back here and listening and chomping at the bit to get up here and make a few comments. You know the qualifications of the Class A, Class B, Class C. You got a Super C, which is the big Volvos and huge, you know, show trailers and stuff like that. Also, you have an HDT, which is a Class 8 semi that's been converted over. It meets all the regulations, and they retitle it as an RV because it's got, you know, toilet, cooking area, refrigerator, air conditioning, heating, and stuff like that. You'll see those going down the roads that have a little smart car on the back of it, pulling the big fifth wheels. You know, for me, I have a fifth wheel. I've had a tow behind, and I've had a pop-up camper. You know, previous, one of the mayors was up there, I brought that to her attention one time. But, you know, when I come in, I go pick mine up. I'm over at the store or the north side storage facility, and I bring my fifth wheel in, and I pull up. Yeah, when you got a 41-foot fifth wheel and big Dodge Dually crew cab, it's kind of a long situation. But I get out, and I'll plug it in to keep the batteries charged, and then start up the refrigerator in it. And it takes a while for the refrigerator to get cool. But usually I come in, you know, go pick it up about noon or something like that, and we start loading it. Well, when it comes time to the refrigeration side of it, I have to extend the roadside slide out just enough to get the refrigerator doors open, and I'll load all that stuff in, and once I'm done, I'll pull that back in, you know, and then I'll go in for another load, and I'll do it every time. Up in the living or the bedroom,
I have to pull the slide out. My wife goes flying across the mattress, but I can't crawl across that sucker. So I pull it out about, 12 inches where I can get my legs through to put all the clothes up in the storage. And there's some of those things like that, bringing out the slides, it's just temporary. It's not sitting out there sleeping. But I don't know how many of you guys had trailers, been out camping. I did a 42-foot diesel pusher, also. And that's fun setting that in front of the house, but it did. And, never left the slides out on that side. The curbside, I leave them out where I can get around in to that area right there, but that's not making no, problems for the people out there. But one of your things you're going to really worry about is a Class B, which is a van. Then you'll see just regular customized vans out there, and people are living out on the streets in those. That's what's out in California. They're homeless people living out of that. You don't want, I can see not having people living on the streets that's homeless. We did that over on Grove because there's a guy from Valley Center that come up and he parked his RV there because Valley Center wouldn't let him park it on the street there, but he had a buddy that lived there. We passed that ordinance when I was on the council. So, you guys are going the right way. Just don't give time constraints because I might be bringing it in this day and this whole day right here and leave the next morning. So it would be, maybe a day and a half and then maybe another half day. I know it'll be about 48 hours, but I can't guarantee I can be out in 36 or something like that. I love, to get everything ready. And when I leave, it'll be, 2 weeks at a time, maybe a month or 2 months. So I just, you think about it, and if you had one, I know we had a permit that we weren't going to allow no more RVs in. If you sell your RV, then had that permit on it, you weren't going to have it back. I don't know what happened to that situation. That was one of the things Jack come up with.
That's what we're talking about.
That's what you're talking about, just a permit?
We're replacing that system.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know there was a special meeting on this, because I just knew you were at 7 o'clock here. And, I can see some of the things that, that are out there. And there's cities that ban people parking at Walmart and stuff like that because the campground people. If you guys want to make some money, get in the campground business. Try to get the one up at the Coliseum and refurbish it and make it a Park City campground. Charge, $40, $50 a night, something like that. But get people stopping. There's no place for people on the road to stop, so that's another thing you guys need to consider. And so, just, like I say, you guys are doing your thing and stuff, and I just wanted to let you know that there's things out there that, you don't want to get rid of, in the sense of banning people parking in the Walmart parking lot or Atwood's, and spending the night. Truck drivers need a place to stop and sleep. RVers are the same way. Campgrounds are getting with the city and saying, hey, I'm not getting no revenue. I know when I was parked at Walmart's with that big motorhome, wife and daughters and stuff, I'd have been going to a campground at $30 a night. I'd spend $100 at Walmart. So there's things out there and stuff. I don't mean to take up your time, but, be checking out, looking at all the stuff that's out there, other cities that, possibly doing stuff. So that should be it. I'm done.
Does anybody else have any comments? Tom?
I do have one. Cecil touched on it, and that's where I had my hand up a few minutes ago. The reason we put the 48 hours for loading on there is because we did have people parking RVs on the street and they never moved. And when the city would go harass them, they'd drive them around the block, park them again. And Grove was real bad. It was like RV row along there. And so we need to keep some kind of a time constraint for parking in the street, whether it be 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever. The stickers, that was to allow people to park in front of their houses as long as they own the RV, which gave them an exemption from being beside it. And
Yeah.
that's just dwindled down to where there's not very many doing that anymore, so anyway.
All right.
That's all, only comment I had.
I think we had some good dialogue. I mean, we spent an hour and 45 minutes kind of hashing this out, and there's still a lot of room here. The one thing Sean, I'd like to say is we did a good job looking at everybody local. Let's try to look regionally and see if we can see somebody that may have something successful that we can look at. And if you do find something, can you go ahead and email that out to everybody on the council? So
Yes, sir.
so we can kind of look at it and see if we can't help craft something that, whatever we do, we want to make sure we're friendly to people so that they can store their stuff at home if they can do it in the right space. But we also want to make sure that neighbors are not encroached upon at the same time. And it's a healthy balance in there, you know. And sometimes people come to us because we're the last resort, and people should be able to have peace in their own home as well. So we'll just keep working on this and see if we can't come up with something that's going to be successful.
I was going to say a couple of the markets you may be looking at, maybe Emporia, Lawrence, Manhattan, and places like that where they have people that come in on weekends for ball games and stuff, and see what kind of parking and permitting they have there.
Okay. All right, that was the last item on the agenda, so we'll go to closing comments. George?
Well, you know, I just a few minutes there. You know, God, it's been many years ago. When we first became a city, we were strictly a blue-collar city. And things were different then. The reason we became a city, for those that don't know, is Wichita was getting ready to annex both Bel Air and Park City. And Park City people didn't want that. One of the things they sold us on, they talked to us, and you know, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with this, it's just the way it was. They told us, said, you know, we're a working town. At that time, the aircraft companies were very busy. We were in that situation, and a lot of people work 7 days a week. And they did not want, they promised that we would not have the overbearing regulations like Wichita had. That's why we first became a city. But that was a generation ago. That was my generation. You guys are a new generation, and I'm still here. But you know, we're no longer a blue-collar city. We're a growing city. Things are really looking up. I think staff has done a marvelous job. You look at this city hall, and you look at some of the businesses here, you know, they've done a wonderful job. And we're no longer a blue-collar city, so things is changing. And it's hard for old guys like me to accept change, but I can see it coming. And I'm willing to go along with whatever you guys want to do. But I still think I'm entitled to my opinion. But that's all I got.
I don't know, I brought this up to you last meeting, George, where in the generational gap, I just see in your generation, people took more pride and care in their stuff, and we didn't have to have people go out and tell somebody to cut the grass or pick up the trash. And you see it today. I mean, look at what used to be Boys Island, where Hendricks went in there, built all those houses. some people take pride in their stuff, and other people, you're like, really, you did that to like $180,000 home? You know, like, I wish this generation there were more people that took pride and ownership in what they had, and we've lost that somehow from where your group was.
Well, you guys have been go-getters. I got to give it to you. You're getting it done. And what else can I say?
Ben?
Yeah, I do want to just say, it feels like we were able to accomplish a lot tonight in the realm of quality of life issues for Park City, and that's kind of exciting just to see where we're headed there. Say again, thank you, reiterate what George said. Thank you to staff. We're really seeing some positive directions. Thank you, Jennifer, for doing the work on this research for the municipal codes there. I appreciate that there. So just want to say thank you to our staff. And then don't forget, not this Sunday, but next Sunday, March 7th, is Time Change Sunday. So we get an extra hour of sunlight, not sleep.
Melvin?
I don't have anything.
Tom?
Make a motion with Jenner.
How about we get
Oh,
through
I'm
everybody
sorry.
else?
I thought we were around already. Okay.
I'll come back to you. Jen? I got nothing. Brandy?
I have nothing.
John?
Just good discussion tonight from the council. I thought we had very good stuff. You know, it's hard when you start trying to govern respect for your fellow neighbors and friends and stuff, so it's tough, but good conversation, so that's all.
Tom?
I was snoozing, so now I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Ben?
Second, and I'd just also like to thank Council Lady Bailey for the cookies tonight.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? And that motion passes 7-0. Thank you and good evening.